Hello everyone and welcome to Fuse Room. I'm Alberto. In this video we're going to talk about FreeHome. It's a community-driven library that ADO has done for the 5th time, and people sent samples to the developers who then selected part of them to make it into the library that we're gonna showcase today. Now, the folder structure is pretty simple. You have documentation, you have instruments, resources, and samples. And normally you would probably want to go into instruments, where you have 5 main presets: ambience, designed, instruments, noises, and percussion. Now, these are main instruments in the term that you can actually design whatever you want from these. But should you want to have presets, the developers created some, and these are actual creative presets that make use of the above main instruments to create something ready to use and fantastic. Let's take a look at the interface. If you have a Legion series library, you'll feel at home here because the interface is exactly the same and it works and it's pretty straightforward to use. You have 4 main windows: browser, sequencer, effects, and modulation. And at the bottom you have main and effects, which dictate the main effects that every patch is gonna have. It's a sort of an extra effects rack that a lot of ADO libraries have. Now, the main pane is the articulations, and you have the instruments here in different slots, and when you select them, you can play them. Right? So selecting them obviously triggers the fact that you can play them, but you can also dynamically allocate a key or a controller to do a key switch in case you're using key switches. You can turn these on and off, and you have a volume that's gonna be used for leveling your volume during key switches or during stack, which we'll see later. Now, attack, release, speed, pitch envelope, glide, and offset, the bottom pane, is going to dictate how the samples you selected behave. So attack is obviously the attack of the sound. So some sounds have a pretty sharp attack, right? And you can tailor that. And other sounds have releases that are going to extend the time that it takes for the sound to decay after you let go of the key. Pitch, envelope, and glide might be a little bit harder to get, but essentially glide at 12 o'clock means that the pitch envelope's not gonna do anything, because it's gonna envelope to exactly 12 o'clock, which is the mental 0 of the patch. But if you go up counterclockwise, you're gonna hear that the pitch envelope is now engaging in one direction. If you go the other side, then it's an ascending pitch envelope. Now, the offset function I really love. It's especially important on percussive instruments. So here you might have it static if you want, where you select an offset for the sample start. So you're actually starting the sample after its initial actual waveform, start. So, and you hear after a while, I'm getting so late in the offset that I'm actually only triggering the tail part of the sample. But if I get it close enough to 0, and then I randomize it, the control's gonna use the maximum value and the minimum, and it's just gonna randomize values within that threshold, of values. And this is particularly cool with percussions again, because of the way that they feel ever so slightly differently played, if you want. And that's what happens in reality. So there's a lot of samples that they captured, but they also can be mangled this way to get the feel of something that is much more human, right? Then you can reverse the samples. Which is always cool. You can stretch them, meaning you can use one sample and then stretch it, which in theory is an inferior and old school way of doing sampling, but it has a sound. People like it. It's much different than the actual equivalent at lower octaves. Right? It feels completely different and it feels artificial, and it can be used for sound design. If you want, you can even stack these sounds. So you can select more than one and you can then decide which volume they're gonna have. And, you know, the possibilities just become endless this way. I think it's just the way these interfaces built, it's just a combination of combinations, and there's just no limit to how creative you want to be. Now, the other panes, sequencer, effects, and modulation, are what make this library incredible in terms of sound design. So the modulation pane, I'm going to start from the end, has these expression with dynamics and expression that are, in this case, disabled. And then there's tuning, which can be chromatic and free, you know, for maybe percussions or whatever use you want to have. The coolest thing for me is the gate. You can decide how intense the gate effect is going to be and the rate at which it's going to play. So something like this, obviously is not going to have any effect. But if you take a sound that has a sustain factor, right? It's gonna play nicely, and if you quantize it, you can make all sorts of rhythmic elements with just one single note or a chord. It's super cool if you think about it. It's just a simple gate effect with a little bit of reverb creates, you know, such an expressive way of playing and, you know, just creating music. The effects pane is also incredible. You have 4 vector pads that you can use to dial in 4 effects among low pass, high pass, band pass, distortion, lo-fi, rotator, delay, chorus, phaser, flanger, reverb, and transform, which a lot of you know from Kontakt or other ADO libraries, right? These are de facto standards for a lot of sound design people, and they sound great. So you can pick 4, they're in series, so they go one after the other from left to right. So let's try something in the effects pane just to, you know, let you understand how things work. So the reverb we've been listening to for, you know, since the start. A lot of size and a lot of color. Then the lo-fi, for example. I really like how it whooshes the sound away and it just closes it. The low pass also. It could be just awesome because the low pass turns sort of the lo-fi on and off. It doesn't, but it makes it, you know, possible for us to hear it or not, depending on how the bits and sample rate are mangling the sound. The sequencer, however, is where I would use this entire library to create sound design stuff for at least the soundtracks that I write. You can select how many hits each note has to play, along with how many steps you want. The intensity of these steps are, you know, in this graph, sort of a histogram. And then you have a pattern, obviously, where you have a lot of ways to tell the arpeggiator how you want the notes to be played. So let's try it down. The rate, obviously, as found in any arpeggiator, we're gonna use 16, and the swing if you want the notes to be swung. So for example, here, let's try 2, and let's try a different sound like open flask. So I'm gonna start completely dry, maybe only the reverb, just can't live without the reverb. And let's hear it with no, you know, just naked. All right, so this is cool. It has kind of lost that a little bit of sharp attack. Then we're gonna use the sequencer. I set it to down, 2 hits, 8 steps. Right? But wait, because there's just reverb. Let's try and delay things first, which is the second effect. Here, this is just already great. Let's low pass this a little bit. It's just great. One sound and you can get so much, and I'm playing and mousing around. Imagine if you have it laid down on your sequencer, you can really fine tune all the movements, maybe one by one, for your most precise songwriting and frame matching, maybe with a video or with any kind of event you already have in your session. So this pretty much concludes everything you can make here in terms of browsing, sequencing, effects, and modulation. So let's move to the other main instruments and just take a glimpse at what the articulations are. Obviously, they could be mangled again by everything I've done, but it's a free library. You're free to test it out. So just to get an idea of what the samples that people submitted and were selected by ADO are. So Ambience, for example, has just one articulation with different noises. So Homebody Ambience. These are incredible. Some of these could be soundscapes that could last maybe, I don't know, a minute or so with music on top of it. This is more of a rain thing. And this is birds. So Homebody Ambience has a lot of these realistic samples designed there. Then Designed has probably something more into the sound design era. So we have Design 1, 2, 3, 4, and loops. I'm just gonna play some notes. Wow. I'm literally discovering this library with you, which is super cool. These are all sorts of whooshes, tails, subs, hits, sort of, right? Beautiful. It's really a collection of samples. This is great. 3 should be yet another sort of like collection. This is awesome. It's a groove on its own. And if we speed it down, it's super cool, incredible. Then designed loops. Oh, these are great. I mean, I think you're hearing ideas while I'm playing. I have a lot of ideas here just by playing something like this. This is sort of like a very post-apocalyptic stuff that is just right in my alley. Awesome. Noises. Let's take a look at noises. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are all collections that are made just so you have, I think, convenient key mapping. That's just it. There's no sort of relation here. They're all kind of different, and every note could be a world for one song of yours or more. I mean, this is awesome. I can't imagine somebody doing this and tracking it, and it's just fantastic. Noises 2. You're starting to see the sort of like leitmotif, right? People are at home, and that's why they recorded that stuff at home. So there's a lot of noises in your home environment that you would never believe could be so artistic and inspiring. You can stretch it. There you have a sort of a vibraphone kind of sound with maybe a doorbell. It doesn't sound much different if I speed it up, but you can pitch envelope it. And then 4. Somebody was doing home renovation, you know. Can't miss the chance to sample it, right? Then percussion. These, I assume, are gonna be percussion-based samples. So we got 1, 2, 3 again. And 2. You see, the same keys are not triggering, you know, the same sample, not even remotely sometimes. Right? So you can affect these to oblivion. Something like reverb, you know, before we have a delay, a low pass, and then a rotator. So then it's in quarter notes, and the sequencer I've selected as played, and it's also quarter notes. So even with just as simple as that, just panning around the low pass creates an entire soundscape. So the presets then are, I don't want to spoil them all for you, but the bell tolls or the ether, and that sounds cool. These are pre-made. So here they've picked a stack of articulations. They've picked maybe a sequencer, no, but they could have. Effects, yes, delay, rotator, low pass, and then the 4th one's off. And then modulation seems to be pretty standard. So here, giving a G minor theme today. Awesome. The Path. It's also a great name. Let's try this. even super low pitch stuff. One note, right? That's oftentimes all you need. UFO pluck, UFO pluck. Awesome. I mean, all of these presets have obviously the browser sequencer effects and modulation all together, designed by the programmers to give you quick ideas to play. Then let's not forget that being Kontakt, all of these parameters can be assigned to controllers. So for example, in this case, the cutoff from the first low pass is assigned to the modulation wheel. And that's just one of the ideas, but you can map everything thanks to the engine that Kontakt has. The idea, the last principle that I would really like to transfer to all of you watching these is that free libraries are no longer scaled down, useless demos of something commercial that you should pay for. Especially with ADO, free libraries are nowadays incredible gold mines of sounds that you can access and use in your own songwriting. I have so many free libraries that I use in my songwriting and scoring and soundtracks for video games, and they always give me the 1, 2, 3 sounds that people have no idea where they're coming from, and I myself am usually surprised of how well they stuck together. The surprise factor sometimes is awesome because you can't know them all, and you might get a couple free libraries and try them out, and you might find the perfect sketch or brush stroke that you want to use in your composition. So if there was one last thing that I would like you, to remember is that a lot of the free stuff these days is incredible, starting from FreeHome and what ADO has done so far, because they have a lot of other free libraries and you can go on their website and download them. So as usual, I hope this was useful to you, and it's gonna give you ideas to make different kind of music, better kind of music, weirder, scary, cinematic, I don't know. Whatever you wanna do with these tools, they're probably getting you one step closer to the sound you have in your head. As usual, thank you very much for watching me. Ciao.